A poll released by the Alliance for American Manufacturing shows that for the first time in modern history, the majority of Americans doubt this country's economic preeminence. In fact, 58% of voters no longer believe that America has the strongest economy. When asked who they thought was number one, here's what everyday Americans had to say.
I don't think it's us anymore, which is problematic.
I think China is the number one economy in the world.
We're losing a lot of ground, obviously, to China.
Brazil, India, China are on the rise.
I would say China with the emerging market.
China is growing at a much faster pace.
Mark Mellman, a Democratic pollster who conducted the poll along with Republican pollster Whit Ayers, revealed what surprised him about the results.
About a third of Americans believe that the U.S. is the strongest economy in the world. That is shocking to me for a country that is so used to being number one. Now, the reality is people are very anxious to regain that title. They think it's very important, and they think it's very possible for us to be the number one economy in the world again, but they certainly don't believe we are now.
From union households to Tea Party supporters, Americans agree we have lost far too many manufacturing jobs, and 78% of those polled support a national manufacturing strategy to remedy sky-high unemployment.
It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. If you buy, sell, import, manufacture, or distribute industrial fasteners, this is the Internet Talk Radio show for you. Welcome everybody, Eric Dudas here, and we're joined today, as always, by the co-host of Fully Threaded. He's a duty-free import to the U.S., most recently from Sydney, Australia, and we're lucky to have him. He's Brian Musker. G'day, sir.
Hey, again. You know, you have to really get out your book of how to speak Australian to say that right. It says, "G'day, again," which translates as "Good day. How are you?"
Did you bring one of those back for me? I hope.
No, I left them at the airport.
Well, it's good to hear that you and the lovely and talented Lim Dempsey have returned back from your travels in one piece. The trip was a success, I take it.
Yes, it was. I flew over in the Airbus 380. That's the new huge plane, and came back in my favourite Boeing 747. And the reality is this, that there's nothing that you can do to a seat in an aeroplane to make it comfortable sitting for 15 hours in one place. But I want to return to that little subject of Boeing a little bit later. It fits in with our theme, and it's very relevant.
You bet. We'll make sure to do that. Let's run down the lineup for today's show. This is episode 23, and it will be published to the Fully Threaded website on April 7th, 2011. There was some big news this week from software provider Activant Solutions, and we'll be speaking with Russ Mellott for details on that. Then we'll check in with Janice Ceresa from Anixter and get an update on the Fastener Industry LinkedIn group, which she administers. Also, we'll hear about her work with another prominent social networking tool. Next, on today's feature segment, we're going to get into a little bit of a heavy topic and discuss U.S. manufacturing and the case to be made for strengthening it with IFI Technical Director Joe Greenslade and Harry Moser of the Reshoring Initiative. This is a serious topic with important impacts for both the fastener industry and the country. We'll get all of that kicked off with Mike McNulty's Fastener News Report, and this edition includes further details about the situation at Heads and Threads. So, Mr. Musker, there's the preview for episode 23. Ready to dive into some moderately fastener-related discussion in advance of today's segments?
Well, it's more than moderately fastener-related. Fasteners really affect every single thing we do in life. So
I keep saying that.
We can talk about almost anything, and it's related to the fastener industry. Actually, it'll be good to talk to Janice again. I see you're out on LinkedIn all the time, linking up a storm. What's this all about?
Well, I've been knocking around out there for a little, some linking in here and some twittering there. Still not too much Facebooking, though, but I am definitely getting used to all this social media and learning more and more little by little. And, you can really see the level of participation in the industry growing out there. It's one of these things that seems to build on itself. More companies get more benefits as the participation increases. And, I should have mentioned during the last episode, I wrote an article for American Fastener Journal about social networking in the fastener industry, and it's running in the current issue, which is the March-April issue. They have a pretty slick online version of the magazine. You have to enter your email address to get in, but it's well worth it. And you can do that at the website www.fastenerjournal.com. So check out my article there.
Yep, well worth going and reading that there. And a subject that was in numerous conversations with people I had in Australia, sort of the same confusion as most people have when we talk to them. They're not quite sure how to really get into it or what it's doing, except they're convinced that they need to be doing it.
Right. Well, it is a little bit of a baffling subject for a lot of people, and this article tries to help people get their arms around it a little bit. Also, at the Fastener Tech 11 show coming up June 13th through the 15th in Rosemont, Illinois, I've got a seminar that I'm preparing that's going to build on that same subject. So that should be a pretty good show. I know the booth sales are still pretty hot, according to Nancy Rich over there at the NWFA. And I'm looking forward to kind of working up on this article and doing a great seminar out there.
Right, so this is sort of expanding on the talk you did at the NIFS West.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
I'm kind of an inadvertent pundit on this subject. I never really set out to be, but hey, you bloom where you're planted, so to speak, right?
Right, that's right.
And speaking of associations and all that good stuff, the NFDA Spring Conference is actually going on right now as we're recording this, and I guess with that, I have to introduce this week's
Screw Up of the Week.
Wow, that was cool.
You like that?
Yeah. Where'd you get that from?
Well, we do what we can around here.
I can see.
During the last episode, I was talking with Matt Ulrich, and of course he's going to be elevated to president of the NFDA at this meeting, and we had said that the meeting is taking place in Orlando, Florida, but that was a mistake. It's not. It's happening at Palm Beach. So, sorry, NFDA. Hope we didn't cause too much hardship there. I didn't get any nasty emails about it, did you?
No, not about that anyway.
I should mention to people, though, that when you do send us these flame emails, really good spelling and grammar by and large, Good job, folks.
Yeah. and we check that very, very carefully.
In other screw-up news, I thought we were going to have an interview on this episode with the guy from Eclipse Fasteners down in Australia from your trip down there. What happened to that, Brian?
Well, there's this problem with time zones. It's sort of afternoon in America is morning the next day in Australia, and it's a little bit difficult to get these all sorted out, but I've definitely spoken to Justin about this, and he'd give us a really interesting perspective of the same industry in a different country, and that's why I want to go ahead with it. We will get it, okay?
Okay. Well, sorry, folks. We'll have it for you in the near future. We also had, speaking of emails, several commenting on the kookaburra sound effects we used in the last episode. So, we need another reason to throw those in, right?
Well, it's not necessarily sound effects, because the actual truth was that outside of my window was a kookaburra, okay? And they're interesting in the pictures and the movies, but the fact is they're very loud, screechy birds.
Well, either way, listeners seem to enjoy that. And we thank you for listening, folks. And, of course, we also thank you for your emails. So please feel free to contact us anytime, and you can do so at the email address ftr@fullythreaded.com. We're also on Twitter, so you can catch us that way at the handle Fully Threaded. Hey everyone, let's take a moment to remind you that we're the folks behind the FCH Sourcing Network, and I hope you're all using the network. Check it out at www.fastenersclearinghouse.com. You'll find the largest online database of its kind there for sourcing hard-to-find inventory, or use it to do a spot buy or even find a new source. There's a lot going on out there, and you're welcome to jump in anytime at no charge. Also, we'd be very glad to have you list your inventory with us on the network, and the program is all outlined out there, and it's about as cost-effective as you're going to find anywhere in this industry. Once again, that's at www.fastenersclearinghouse.com. Brian, you're the guru behind the FCH database and the spiritual leader of the technical group. What are you guys working on these days?
Well, first, and I know this isn't even fair, but with a new project underway we can't fully announce yet, but I can tell you it'll be a major advancement for the network.
Can we have a hint?
It has to do with your favourite subject of social networking. We'll have an announcement soon, within a couple of weeks.
Little suspense here.
Well, nothing wrong with a bit of suspense. Yeah, we're also rolling out some of the new smartphone-friendly inquiry messages that come out of FCH Network. You know, more and more people really are using FCH via their phones, and we're going to support that more fully. It's going to continue on for a while, that one, and, you know, hopefully next time you and I sit down for dinner with Marty Hannabury from Screws Industries, and he shows us an email that's just come in from Fasteners Clearinghouse, then it'll look better on his phone.
Well, I'm all for that. Especially if he's buying.
I think we're all buying it. Remember, it was the Midwest Fastener Association dinner.
Well, thanks for that update, Brian. We'll be waiting with bated breath. Also, and I think I speak on behalf of the entire FCH user community here, thanks for just being you, Brian Musker.
Right. That's very nice. Thanks, Eric. Now, quit that stuff, okay?
During our main feature today with Joe Greenslade and Harry Moser, you're going to hear them describe this idea of total cost of ownership as it pertains to buying domestic or imports. And we began today's episode with an audio clip from a YouTube video by the Alliance for American Manufacturing entitled America Speaks, Restoring Manufacturing is a Must. And we'll put that on the Facebook page. You know, for another perspective on that, I stumbled across a story online from a pretty unlikely source, actually. It was the Huffington Post.
Right.
I always thought their mission kind of was to destroy America, but...
Right, largely.
Lo and behold, there's a story out there which was by Jerry Jezanowski, the former president of the National Association of Manufacturers, in an article entitled Manufacturing Champions. This is actually kind of an alternative view to the audio clip that we played.
Yeah, we will include a link to this in our Facebook set of links. It really is interesting because it does point out something that we sort of completely forget, if not disregard. But you know, given the fact that there are American companies all over the world, he says that the American companies produce 21% of all globally manufactured products, which is higher than Japan's 13% and China's 12%. So whenever you feel glum about what's happening to American manufacturing, you can think of this article because it's still nearly twice as high as any other country in the world. And it's a great commentary on the true power of American manufacturing.
Yeah, it is easy to forget. You look at the headlines, and of course the trends are not all that good. But that's why we decided to make that the theme of today's episode.
Right, and he lists, you know, basically the 10 really biggest American-based worldwide manufacturing companies, and Boeing, one of my favourite companies, is in that list. So I want to come back to that a little bit later when we finish with our main interviews.
Well, like I was saying, sometimes you dig these things up from the most unlikely sources.
Right, yeah.
And speaking of unlikely sources, I got kind of a weird story that very oddly relates to the fastener industry and social media as well. And that is, I was reading through my Twitter feed the other day, and I saw this article that was suitably ridiculous for me to retweet. You know, occasionally I'll look for one of these and just send it out to my scant few followers, and just for the hell of it.
You mean the great masses and throngs of thousands?
Yeah, but anyway, it's this one, I think I sent the link over to you. It was the one about the fear that you are being watched by a duck, right? It's this, I don't know if I can pronounce this correctly. It's anatophobia.
It sounds pretty close. Not that I'm familiar with being frightened of ducks.
Well, apparently some people are, enough to warrant an article written about it. It came in from Twitter, and it didn't come in from the Fastener side of my feeds. And so I retweeted it. Lo and behold, about a day later, this thing showed up on the Fastener Industry LinkedIn group, and I got it in the emailed news digest.
So you're going to become famous as the person who introduced the fear of ducks into the fastener industry, right?
Well, another one of my inadvertent roles, I guess.
Okay, this is very, very way out on left beam a long way. But I think you need to get back focused on the fastener industry, okay?
That wasn't a close enough link for you, huh?
No, this is definitely out.
Well, I think we can do that, and we can do that with a guy who I know is always focused on the fastener industry, and that would be Mike McNulty. So why don't we bring him on right now with his Fastener News Report.
Good.
Thanks, Eric, and greetings to all the fully threaded radio listeners out there. This is Mike McNulty with the Fastener News Report, brought to you by Fastener Technology International, your print and digital magazine for the whole fastener industry. Well, Eric, baseball season is underway on big and small fields all over the country, including youth, high school, college, and major league games. I'm a baseball fan, and I'm happy to report that even though my favorite professional team, the Cleveland Indians, have already made a visit to last place in the standings, they still have a mathematical chance to win the Central Division and make the playoffs this fall. But until that happens, I'm going to stay focused on the fastener industry. Our lead story today is that we have updates on two previous Fastener News Report lead stories, one on Heads and Threads financial problems, and the other on the tariff battle between China and the European Union. First up, Heads and Threads International has not released any official statements to the press or the public, but there are numerous reports of the release of a document created for the benefit of HTI creditors. The letter, titled Notice of Assignment for the Benefit of Creditors, said that HTI's financial position has deteriorated because of three factors: the recent recession in the USA, the entrance of a new competitor, and excess inventory available throughout the industry. In conclusion, HTI can't generate enough cash to pay its debts on time, and it has nearly $36 million in outstanding liabilities. At the direction of management and officers, HTI completed a trust agreement last month where they appointed trustee High Ridge Partners to attempt to collect outstanding receivables, sell off HTI assets, oversee their liquidation efforts, pay off debt as much as possible, and pay expenses involved in the whole process. Creditors have until June 21st to submit their claims. The notice says that HTI has a book value of just over $39 million in assets made up of accounts receivable, inventory, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The amount of cash on hand was listed as none. Most of the details of the letter can be found on globalfastenernews.com. Our second update is on the China-EU fastener trade battle. Both sides have submitted appeals on last December's World Trade Organization ruling that condemned the European Union's anti-dumping tariffs on imports of Chinese screws and fasteners. The Europeans said that the WTO ruling breaks global trade law and goes too far, while the Chinese said that the ruling doesn't go far enough. China said that the EU has made unfair comparisons between high and low quality screws and bolts. Last year's win was China's first against the EU at the World Trade Organization, but the whole story dates back to early 2009 when the EU imposed anti-dumping duties ranging up to 85% for 5 years on imports of Chinese fasteners. China reacted to this action by imposing its own duties of around 25% against European fasteners being shipped into China. The WTO has a couple of months to respond to these two appeals. Now let's move on to our Fastener Newsmaker highlights, which start off this time with People News. The Industrial Fasteners Institute, also known as the IFI, has announced its 2011-2012 slate of elected leadership as well as its 2011 Soaring Eagle Award winners. Jennifer Johns Friels, president of Midwest Fabricating Company, is the new chairperson, and David Monty of Fall River Manufacturing is the vice chairman of the board for 2011 to 2012. Jennifer is the first woman to chair the IFI in its 80-year history. The IFI board is rounded out by the immediate past chairman Larry Valeriano of California Screw Products, newly elected board member Preston Boyd of Hill Fastener, and returning members John Grabner of Cardinal Fastener, Steve Paddock of Ballhoff, Carl Hutter of Clickbond, H. Ross Wambolt of Monogram Aerospace Fasteners, Mark Quebelm of Semblix, and Bruce Smith of Carpenter Technology. Newly elected officers are Nilo Urbani of Nylock, David Gendry of Quality Bolt and Screw, David Hebert of SFS Intect, and Jason Serber of ATF. The three IFI Soaring Eagle Award winners this year were Frank Cosenza, retired from Alcoa Fastening Systems for Technology. Dan Harther of Semblix posthumously received the Service Award from IFI, and George Grabner, formerly of Lamson & Sessions, was honored with the IFI Leadership Award. MSC Industrial Direct has a new CFO. Jeffrey Kaska is succeeding Charles Bolke as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer effective April 8th. Automotive fastener maker Rightway Fasteners plans to purchase $1.33 million in new manufacturing equipment to increase its capacity. The company is asking Columbus, Indiana City Council for a 10-year property tax abatement to help fund the expansion. Rocknell Fastener, a Rockford, Illinois-based American and Japanese joint venture, has donated $20,000 to the American Red Cross to support relief efforts in Japan. Rocknell's main customer is Honda of America. Design News reports that along with Stanford University researchers, Alcoa is developing aircraft fasteners that also function as sensors capable of detecting cracks in multi-layer composite structures. Fatigue cracks often form at fastener holes in the airframe, which can lead to failures similar to the one at Southwest Airlines last week. And our final newsmaker highlight, local reports say that bolt failures caused a wind turbine's rotor and blades to fall from a tower in north-central North Dakota. The turbine is owned by Iberdrola Renewables, which is a local unit of a Spanish company. The turbine itself was manufactured by Suzlon Wind Energy Corp., a subsidiary of Suzlon Energy based in India. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. All right, Eric, next up is our Fastener Events on the Horizon report featuring another show for Mac Brooks, a simulation roundtable in Rosemont, and a golf outing in California. Mac Brooks' exhibition has informed us that the first Fastener Fair Hanover will take place in April of 2012. The event, which is Mac Brooks' fourth on the 2011-2012 schedule for the fastener and fixing industries, will adopt a 2-year cycle alternating with the 2-year cycle for Fastener Fair Stuttgart, which currently holds the unofficial title as the world's largest fastener show. The next Stuttgart show is scheduled for February of 2013. Mac Brooks' other 2 fastener shows are scheduled for India and Brazil this year. Details on all these shows is available at fastenerfair.com. The panelists are set for a simulation roundtable panel discussion taking place at Fastener Tech 11 in Rosemont, Illinois. John Walters, Vice President at Scientific Forming Technologies in Columbus, Ohio, Arjun Bujic of Simulfact Engineering in Hamburg, Germany, and Gaurav Nagpal, Sales and Marketing Manager of Metal Forming Systems in Canton, Michigan, are the panelists. The session will present state-of-the-art simulation technology for fastener manufacturing processes, and the graphic images presented at the roundtable will be impressive. This roundtable is presented free of charge for Fastener Tech visitors. You can see details on this at fastenertech.com. The Mel Kirshner Memorial Golf Outing is scheduled for Friday, May 6th at the West Ridge Golf Club in La Habra, California. The outing is organized by the Pacific West Fastener Association, and sponsors include Computer Insights, Pacific Fasteners, and Ultra Fastener Company. ND Industries is sponsoring a hole-in-one contest in memory of Hugh Martin. Details on this outing are available at pac-west.org. Finally, let's turn to the back page of this report where I present a personal interest story and some editorial comments. This time around, I have more on General Electric and the existence of corporate welfare in the United States. In the last Fastener News Report, we talked about General Electric's cozy relationship with the Obama administration, which includes GE's support for the government-subsidized Chevy Volt, GE's activity in government-favored sources of energy and transportation, and favors granted to GE CEO Jeffrey Immelt, who is a frequent travel companion of President Obama. Well, the story was punctuated this past week with news that GE didn't pay any federal taxes for 2010, even though it had billions of dollars in profits from its USA and worldwide operations. Now, the individual tax filing deadline of April 15th is just around the corner, and I know that I paid more in federal taxes than GE did in 2010. I'm also willing to bet that most fully threaded radio listeners and their companies are in the same boat as me. GE defended itself by citing losses from its financial arm, GE Capital, which, by the way, got TARP money from the USA when it was in financial trouble during the recession. The reality here is that GE took advantage of tax breaks and creative accounting methods, many of which it has lobbied for and helped create. I think that this whole situation is fairly ridiculous, but it's just another example of corporate welfare, which is legal and growing behind the scenes. It helps many corporations, but in the end, I think that it hinders the growth and initiative of smaller companies, individuals, and families because it distorts and stifles the natural forces of free markets and the free enterprise system that has made this country great. If we do not reduce the importance and power of government, then things will only get worse. Consider that today in the USA, more people are working for the government than individuals are working in manufacturing, farming, fishing, forestry, mining, and utilities combined. If we factor in the companies in these latter groups that are on corporate welfare, then the numbers would become even more startling. As Stephen Moore of the Wall Street Journal wrote earlier this month, we've become a nation of takers, not makers. This has been Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International bringing you the Fastener News Report. Visit FastenerTech.com to learn more about the fastener industry and send your news, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at McNulty@FastenerTech.com.
It's fully threaded. Stay tuned.
FastenersClearinghouse.com. Search and source from over 500,000 line items, all just a mouse click away and available at no charge. When the need arises, you won't find a better place to locate hard-to-find fastener inventory. It's where you need to be.
This is Joe Truckee of Cal Fasteners, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for us.
This is Robert Wanzer, and Fasteners Clearinghouse works for American Imperial.
This is Andy Pell from ScrewCrew.com, and FCH works for the fastener industry.
Join the sourcing network now and show your inventory to a whole new market. Turn slow movers into cash. List up to 10,000 line items. Show them to distributors only or to the world. FastenersClearinghouse.com. It's where you need to be.
This is Tom Buddenbone. I am the membership chair for the NFDA and the partner in Technology Components Southwest. I'd like to invite you to consider membership in the NFDA. Some of the benefits to membership include tremendous industry networking, business education via the Institute for Trend Research, economic insights with the quarterly trend reports from a service that's provided to us, global perspective when buying and selling all over the world, tremendous benefit in information sources from Asia and Europe, gives you an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with other members, both suppliers and distributors. We offer an annual meeting that has ESPS session, which are a series of 30-minute scheduled meetings with existing companies you do business with, and more importantly, for companies that you don't do business with and want to learn a little more about. Our goal is to gain new members, both distributors and associates or manufacturers and large importers. and we also want to invite back those that have dropped out of NFDA in the past due to some of the economic issues of the past couple of years. It's a great association with great members. Please take a peek at www.nfda-fastener.org, or you can call the office for NFDA at area code 312-673-4900. Thank you again, Tom Buddenbone with Technology Components and the NFDA.
Hi, this is Heidi Voltrauer inviting you to the All-American Fastener Show in Branson, Missouri, May 12th through the 13th. For details, go to allamericanfastenershow.com. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
We mentioned at the top of the program that big news had been announced by Activant Solutions. On April 4th, the software company released a statement on its website headlined, Activant Solutions agrees to be acquired by Apex Partners. You can access the press release at the website www.activant.com. It describes that Apex Partners has also entered into a definitive agreement with Epicor Software Corporation. So it appears that Apex could combine the two software companies. Activant Solutions is the leading provider of ERP software in the fastener industry. We spoke to Russ Mellott just 2 days after the announcement and recorded this segment. Software provider Activant Solutions is well known in the fastener industry through its Profit 21 and FastPack ERP systems, which support wholesale distributors in many business sectors, including the fastener industry. The company released a major announcement on Monday. I first saw it via the Activant Twitter feed, actually. And here to describe just what's happening is Activant Vice President of Sales, Russ Mellott. Welcome to Fully Threaded, Russ. What can you tell us about Monday's announcement?
Oh, thank you, and good morning. As far as this announcement, the transaction is extremely positive for both Activant's customers and employees alike. Our market leadership and expertise in both distribution and specifically in the fastener market perfectly complements Epicor's expertise in manufacturing and services sectors. Together, Activant and Epicor's retail business solutions can now cover a full spectrum of retailing, from hardlines retailers to national specialty and apparel chains to even global, general merchandise department stores. Additionally, with Epicor's worldwide infrastructure, we will have the opportunity, Activant that is, to service and support Activant products internationally, which has been very important to our customers to help them compete as an increasingly global business environment grows. We actually believe it will also accelerate the progress of our next generation product plans into the future.
Now, as I understand it, this is a preliminary announcement only of an acquisition, and further details will be forthcoming. What can Profit 21 users expect during the next month or two, during the interim, while things firm up?
Sure. Actually, you hit the nail on the head. The closing of the deal is subject to regulatory clearances, to the Epicor shareholder approval, and other customary conditions, as both companies are public, Epicor publicly traded, and Activant with our public bonds. During this period over the next month or two, we are operating on a business-as-usual basis, working on the integration plan for the point at which we close. At this point, there's nothing more we can really share as specifics on the planning is ongoing, and the deal has not been officially closed. Until closing, we will continue to operate as two separate companies, and Activant specifically is looking to build on the success we've had over the last several quarters in bringing on a fair number of new accounts in the distribution space and again, specifically in the fastener market.
Fair enough. Now, speaking of business as usual, Activant held its Summit 2011 users meeting recently, and by all accounts, it was a huge success. What was the takeaway message from this year's conference, Russ?
Oh, sure. Actually, the event was just incredible. It was our single largest customer conference ever, even larger than back in 06 and 07 at the peak of the economy. We had close to 2,000 people at the event. And from our perspective, seeing as how we're in so many different markets, it was actually a great indicator of the direction of the economy and the distribution sectors specifically. Our key message at the event was to prepare for the growth and the rebound, and to make sure that everyone is leveraging technology and a lot of the solutions we can provide to be able to continue to do more with less. So as business grows, the operational footprint of our customer base doesn't have to grow in parallel, thus increasing their profitability. So it was a fantastic event, and we're looking forward to be a springboard for the rest of the year for us.
Well, from the perspective of Fastener's Clearinghouse, we're all on board with that message.
Oh, that's great. We appreciate the time.
We've been speaking with Russ Mellott of Activant Solutions. Thanks for joining us, Russ.
And thank you. Take care, everyone.
We're talking now with Janice Ceresa. She's with the Anixter Aerospace Hardware Group, and she's the owner and administrator of the Fastener Industry LinkedIn group. We've talked with her before. Janice, welcome back to Fully Threaded.
Thank you, Eric.
Hey, the group sure has grown since we talked to you last time. What is it, something over 3,400 users now?
Yeah, we've been it's been increasing almost daily, getting a wide variety of folks that are joining the group.
Well, we wanted to touch base with you again. You know, we do talk a lot on the show about social networking, and it's something that I've definitely become a student of the whole subject over the last year or so. Recently, a message came out that indicated the Fastener Industry Group is now an open group. What does that mean for users?
Well, the really good thing about the open group is it gets a little bit more visibility, and it's also indexed on Google. So you can search for it and find the information. You can actually see some of the discussions. So it becomes more available to more people.
Is that a new option that LinkedIn just began offering? I've noticed that other groups are kind of moving in that direction too. It seems like a pretty good benefit.
Yeah, I think it was about a few months ago, maybe about 3-4 months ago. And one of the caveats of that is once you make it an open group, you can't go back. So I could see where a number of folks are probably waiting to see the benefits of other groups before making that big commitment. There's no givesy-backsies on that. So once you make it open, you have to keep it in that status. But I think there's only benefits to having an open group, and you know, again, getting more folks exposure to the kind of discussions and the different members that are in those groups.
Well, I think there are 14 subgroups now within Fastener Industry, and is it possible to keep the secure status of those subgroups within the larger open group, or how does that work?
Sure, there's a couple different options. I mean, you're able to go in and you're able to put parameters on you know, certain folks that have a limited amount of maybe connections. In other words, it keeps those folks that are out there just to spam, that are just going into any groups and just dumping information. So there are some parameters you can put on that, and they give you a wide variety of options. But again, if you want to comment on something, or if you want to you know, make a comment on one of the discussions, typically you have to be a member of that group to allow that function.
Okay. So do you see any trends emerging in the group? I know last time we talked it was still kind of a new thing, and you had the high hopes for it. What are you seeing out there these days? What's happening with the group?
Well, it's kind of great in the sense that the group really makes the discussions. They make the things happen out there. You know, you see folks from anything from self-promotion to just asking to source information or get information. We've had folks that were just new into the fastener industry and actually asked advice on it. So there's a variety. The interaction is kind of up to the folks that join, they kind of steer the conversations in the directions they want to go. So it's been kind of fascinating just to sit back and watch that interaction and the contributions that some of the folks long-term in the industry can provide some of the newbies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've paid pretty close attention to a lot of the sourcing questions. There are a lot of those, you're right.
Yeah.
Looks like LinkedIn had a couple of rocky days recently. Did you get any special insights into that? Looked like the site was down. Is that anything that you can comment on?
Well, I think they've been doing a lot of upgrades. What I always go into, they have a blog on there. If you go into their learning center, they actually have a blog on some of the new upgrades they do or changes to their platform. And they're really expanding pretty fast, it looks like. So they're creating all sorts of new tools, new forms of applications. So I would think with that, you're probably going to get a couple glitches here and there. They're pretty responsive if something, major happens. You send it to customer service. They're pretty good at responding back. But I suspect we might see a couple more bumps because, again, there's some really cool tools that they're coming out with.
Right. It really isn't surprising considering the magnitude of the network they're dealing with. And really over the long haul, they've been very stable. So I'm not surprised by this, and it doesn't seem like it's out of hand, but I was curious.
Yeah.
Well, another site that's had a little bit of rockiness here and there over the time I've been using it is Twitter. And I see that you're out there very actively, and you've got at least a couple of accounts out there. Have you made any discoveries on Twitter? Does it seem to be doing what you're hoping for? What are you doing out there, Janice?
Well, Twitter is always something, I try something new on. I have a variety of accounts that I use. What's really great is you can connect on Twitter with really folks that are specific in the industry, and you get information pretty quickly. It's amazing if you go out there and if you have a question, somebody is absolutely quick to respond to that. So I kind of, with Twitter, I use that more as a way to source information, talk about what we do in Anixter Aerospace Hardware, and just make connections out there. It's another form of networking. It's another form of getting information, news, and again, where you're kind of industry specific. So I'm kind of partial towards Twitter. I really enjoy working on there, and again, there's a lot of information you have to sift through, but if you keep it specific to your industry, you can find a lot of great contacts, great networks out there.
Now, with all of the accounts that you're managing on Twitter, can you recommend any of the dashboard tools?
I love Hootsuite. That's one of my favorites. Gives me a lot of options, ability to see across it. They're growing by leaps and bounds. In fact, I was just on setting up my Firefox with the new Hootlet that it has that you can actually use in your internet browser. So yeah, I really like Hootsuite, and I find that extremely helpful in managing the multiple accounts.
I love that Hootlet. Boy, too bad Dr. Seuss isn't around still. He would love all this twitting and hootletting, wouldn't he?
Exactly. If you would have thought I would have been, using this terminology, I would have not believed it. But yeah.
Well, thanks for those updates, Janice. Again, and thank you for your help to the Fastener world with your good work on the LinkedIn group. It's a benefit to everybody.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and if anyone's ever interested in getting any information, they're more than welcome to contact me by my phone or my email. It's out on LinkedIn. So I really enjoyed taking part in this. This is a really great program, so thank you for having me.
Janice Ceresa with the Anixter Aerospace Hardware Group. Joe Greenslade and Harry Moser talk reshoring up next on FTR.
Fastener Tech 11 is the all-fastener industry event in the heart of the fastener industry. This is Nancy Rich, Executive Director of the Midwest Fastener Association. And on behalf of the Midwest Fastener Association and Fastener Technology International Magazine, I'd like to invite you to Rosemont, Illinois, June 13th through the 15th, to attend Fastener Tech 11. This year marks the 30th Fastener show the Midwest Fastener Association has produced. This year's Fastener Tech features seminars, meetings, and activities, including the premier trade exhibition in the Midwest. This event will also include the all-industry reception, which is open to all exhibitors and attendees. Also this year, Fastener Tech will take place alongside Surfin', the annual trade show of the National Association for Surface Finishing, which offers free admission to Fastener Tech attendees. For details and registration information, please visit www.mwfa.net or www.fastenertech.com. If you attend only one industry event this year, make it Fastener Tech 11 in the heart of the fastener industry.
Hi, this is Jim Squillico at Alltech Specialty Fasteners in South Windsor, Connecticut, your authorized Apex distributor. You're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
In 1933, during a period of difficult economic times, FDR signed the Buy American Act into law. The issue of domestic manufacturing has been with us for a long time. One of the exciting aspects of operating the FCH sourcing network is that we get to see trends in search queries as users access the network to locate fastener inventory. One constant over the past several years, since we've been paying close attention really, is the trend towards domestically manufactured parts. We've wanted to take a first pass at this subject on Fully Threaded for some time, and the stars seem to come into alignment for that recently, as you'll understand in a moment. We're honored to be joined for this segment by two distinguished guests to discuss this subject, and one of those gentlemen is Joe Greenslade. He really needs no introduction to the Fully Threaded audience. He's been active in the fastener industry since 1970, and he's currently Director of Engineering Technology for the Industrial Fasteners Institute. In addition to his work with various standards organizations, he's also written countless technical articles. And you can access a variety of tools and resources offered by the IFI at the website www.infast.org. Our other guest is Harry Moser, and he's the founder of the Reshoring Initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. Mr. Moser has an impressive list of credentials also, including degrees from the University of Chicago and MIT. And he's also an inductee to Industry Week's Manufacturing Hall of Fame. His website can be seen at www.reshorenow.org. Obviously, we'll only be able to scratch the surface of the subject of domestic manufacturing, but let's dive in and see what we can learn. Joe Greenslade, you were a presenter at the Pacific West Fastener Association spring meeting, and your topic was why and how to locate domestic fastener suppliers. What was the gist of this presentation, Joe? And is there a reason you decided to give a talk with this theme during the spring of 2011?
Over the last 4 years, the IFI has developed some tools to help distributors and end users to find domestically produced producers of fasteners. We created on our website a feature called Find a Supplier. And on that website, anyone looking for fasteners can go in there and with pull-down menus describe any type of fastener, and there will be an output of the number of manufacturers within North America who produce that particular product. The reason for our timing now is that one of the leading distributors on the West Coast subscribe to our IFI Technology Connection Service, which is an online means of finding technical data on fasteners. And as he got more and more accustomed to using that, he would ask me questions about sourcing as well. So I introduced him to the Find a Supplier feature on the website, And after a couple of instances like that, he said, gosh, this is such a tremendous tool. Would you be willing to present it at the PacWest spring meeting so that the rest of our members can see what a great opportunity this is for looking for fasteners? He also commented, he said, I have to admit, I've done like a lot of other people and gotten accustomed to looking at importers first instead of domestic producers first, and I can see by some of these incidences that that hasn't given me the best choices on manufacturing. So he had asked that I share that with the rest of the members, and that's why the timing right now.
Right. Don't you love when that happens? Harry Moser, you recently presented also, and that was at the Midwest Fastener Association meeting, which was jointly held with the National Association of Surface Finishers, and you were introducing your organization. I'll ask you the same question. What was the thrust of your message, and why is it so important right now?
I'd say that the reason that reshoring is happening now, the reason that the customer companies are more interested is because of the rising wage rates in the low labor cost countries. Chinese wages going up, for example, 20% per year versus 2% here. The currency going up about 6% a year with China. I wish it were more, but at least that's something. Transport costs up with the price of oil up. Increased awareness of the intellectual property risks, and the customers starting to focus on total cost of ownership, on making decisions on sourcing, not just based on price, but based on an awareness of the total cost, the price plus the duty, the freight, the carrying cost of the inventory, the opportunity cost when they can't deliver because the pipeline's too long. So the reshoring initiative, the purpose of the reshoring initiative is to provide a total cost of ownership software that helps the big companies understand those costs so that they can make better decisions, and also to be used by the suppliers, for example, the fastener suppliers. So when they're selling to a customer and the customer says you'd have to match the Chinese price, the idea is to say, do you mean your price from China or do you mean your total cost of ownership from China? And when the customer says, what do you mean? You say, I've got this software from the Reshoring Initiative. Let's fill it out together and decide what I have to do.
Now, just to be clear, the Reshoring Initiative is got a wider scope than simply fasteners. Isn't that true?
Yes. The software is, in effect, a fancy spreadsheet, and you can put any kind of part in. You put in the cost, the price, the freight, or the price, the quantity, the weight, things like that. And it calculates what this total cost of ownership is, but it could be a mold, it could be a machined part, it could be a fastener, it could be an electronic component.
And how long has the organization been in existence?
I started the effort about 2 years ago, and I've been full-time on it for about a year and a half.
Gentlemen, what do you see is the current trend right now? Are we in stasis? Is manufacturing continuing to diminish, or is it actually beginning to return stateside? What do you see? Joe?
Well, the domestic fastening industry is quite strong right now. As all your listeners will probably be aware, 2008 and 2009 in particular were disastrous for all manufacturing, but in September of 2009, there was a sharp turn, and we've seen a dramatic increase in utilization within the fastener industry. Part of that is returning product. Part of it is, as we all do, when the domestic economy turns down, we look more seriously at exporting, so we hear of more exporting of U.S. manufactured fasteners around the world. So it's as the world economy improves, we're seeing a related improvement in the fastener industry. How much of that is the reshoring, I can't say for sure, but I do know I've heard of instances of that being the case because of the shift in a number of the cost elements that go into receiving the part, as Harry is talking about.
from my perspective, clearly manufacturing has been improving in general. It's clearly manufacturing has led the U.S. economy out of the recession. One of the reasons that there's so relatively high capacity utilization, however, is because a significant amount of capacity disappeared. A lot of companies disappeared over the last 2 years especially, but really over the last 10 or 20 years. So you have overall in most mechanical machining kind of things like fasteners and others, you've got, I think, a somewhat smaller pie divided into fewer pieces, and therefore each of the pieces is still fairly good sized. I believe offshoring is still happening. There's still companies that are sending work offshore more than in the past, but at the same time, reshoring is happening. I'm working with individual companies that have used our software and made decisions to bring work back. There's lots of articles every week. There's articles about companies that have reshored, but it's still, I'd say, reshoring is still growing less than offshoring is because it's starting from such a smaller base, which I'd say is just an opportunity for us to bring more back.
If there was a significant shift back to U.S. manufacturing in the fastener world, what effects do you think that would have on distribution the way it's laid out right now?
Well, it would require some adjustment in thinking. As I said earlier, the real impetus for giving the program that I did a couple of weekends ago is that some distributors are realizing that they have become very dependent on import product, and probably it's not the best decision. It's just become a reaction as opposed to a decision on the economics of each particular part and opportunity. So it'll take some reorientation, but I firmly believe that given some thought, they will find more and more opportunities for buying domestically produced parts. One of the things that is important about buying domestically produced fasteners is that it's so much easier for a distributor to work with a domestic manufacturer on complicated special products and the higher-end fastener-related products. And there's a lot more technical support through the domestic manufacturers than the importers or the offshore manufacturers. There are certainly some very excellent manufacturers of fasteners in other parts of the world, but I'm not aware of any that give the level of professional and creative support that's available from our domestic manufactured products. And the good news for the distributors who will take that step is that the margins are generally higher on specialized products and more sophisticated products. So it takes a bit more effort, but the return is greater for looking for those types of products. Also, higher margins can be sought through the sales of proprietary items, and that's one of the things I pointed out at PAC West is that there's over 500 proprietary fastener products manufactured by domestic manufacturers that are designed specifically for special purposes that demand higher prices and higher margins. So it'll take some rethinking, but it'll be beneficial as the distributors will adopt that approach.
You know, I don't think I'll be giving away any confidential information here. I had the opportunity to tour the facility of one of the large master importers, and I asked the facility manager what percentage of the product in this expansive warehouse was domestic, and that was hanging at about 20%, they said. Does the initiative or the shift that we're talking about here, is that going to make any kind of a dent in operations like that, or?
Well, I think here's one thing that will happen. To the extent that they source domestically, they will have better turns on their domestic inventory because they can replenish it sooner, and therefore the amount of inventory they have to carry should come down dramatically the more they source domestically. So you'd actually see less total inventory, but a higher percentage of it being domestic.
Oh, just in time makes a lot more sense when you're sourcing right next door, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Just as an example, the cycle inventory. If you're getting a container in every month, your cycle inventory is going to average half of whatever comes in the container. Your safety stock is proportional to the square root of the lead time. So if the lead time is 1 week in the U.S. and 9 weeks from Asia, you cut your safety stock by a factor of 3. I've got an electronics circuit board manufacturer I'm working with that sourced a component, had gotten it from China because of quality problems, switched to the U.S., and they cut their inventory by a factor of 18.
Well, when you put $1 and cents to that, the carrying costs of that, that's pretty significant, isn't it?
That's the idea.
And really, gentlemen, both of you are making the argument that the total cost of ownership is the reason to really make this decision, or it's something that should more strongly influence the decision of domestic versus imported, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just met for lunch with a supply chain consultant, and he's convinced that still 90% of the customers make their decision almost solely on price. Many of them not even including duty, freight, and the most obvious considerations, much less the somewhat more analytical concerns like carrying cost or opportunity cost. So the big chunks are still there to be taken to help these customers understand where 20 to 30% of their costs are going, and then to see that they will actually save money, that they should bring the work back or some of the work back to the U.S. suppliers, not just for the good of the country, but for their own good, for their own financial performance.
I think one other thing that's going to transpire in the near future is after this disaster in Japan, a lot of companies are going to rethink their sourcing based on just-in-time. Just-in-time is a tremendous tool for cutting costs, but if you build that based on receiving imported product, there's a vulnerability there that nobody thinks about until something like this happens. So I think there's going to be some reevaluation of sourcing strategies in the near future by large users of all kinds of components.
Interesting. You know, I was looking through the slides in your presentation, Joe, and I know you've got a formula here for, I think it's probably a pretty high-level formula, but for calculating out total cost of ownership in trying to make this assessment. And Harry, you've mentioned the software that you're discussing, and is this the same as the total cost of ownership estimator tool, or is this something separate that you're referring to?
What I call the software is the total cost of ownership estimator. Software sounds better than spreadsheet. So it is the total cost of ownership estimator. The customer puts in 20 to 30 pieces of information like price in the U.S. and China, quantity, weight, etc., and the software, the spreadsheet, calculates the total cost of ownership, comes up with, I think, 34 different cost factors: the carrying cost, the travel cost to go check on the supply, all these things that the customers tend to miss because they disappear into overhead or into the balance sheet instead of being aggregated into the cost of goods sold. And so it helps them understand that total cost. And again, that software is available for free for any of the listeners at www.reshorenow.org.
I had a chance to look at that after we talked at the Midwest Fastener Association meeting, and it really does look like a helpful piece of software. I'm not an expert in this field by any stretch, but it's definitely worth a look.
Thank you.
Let's return just for a minute to something that may seem very obvious, but it came up a moment ago, and that's the benefit of all of this. Again, it may seem self-evident, but what are the benefits to bringing manufacturing back? What are we talking about doing here, guys?
Why don't you let me take a first shot at that from a macro overview. The trade deficit is $500 billion per year and growing, and at an average sales per worker in manufacturing of about $150,000 per year, that means there's 3 million jobs lost or that could be recovered if we reshored that 500 billion a year. And if you bring back 3 million manufacturing jobs, you bring back probably 5 million multiplier effect jobs, lawyers to sue the manufacturers, hamburger flippers, people to sell them steel, this kind of thing. And so you have maybe 8 million jobs that come back, and that cuts the unemployment rate by about 5 points. So 9% comes down to 4%. The federal and state budget deficits come down. Is a much happier picture. If all we have to do, and I just say all loosely, is eliminate the trade deficit by bringing the work back. Now, another I think important consideration, the last recession was made worse by the long supply chains. When the customers' sales got cut in half, they started to cancel their supply chain, the orders that were in the pipeline, or at least they didn't place any new orders. And because they had such long supply chains with so much material already in the warehouse and on the boat and already on order from Asia, that they had to slash the orders of the domestic suppliers also, because their turns had gone from maybe 3 a year to 1 a year, and so they slashed everything. So they made the recession worse because of the long supply chains.
Joe, do you want to jump in on that?
Well, I just agree with what Harry has said. My emphasis is more on the technical side, and his obviously is on this economic and macro view, which I agree with all that he said in that regard. The two things that come to mind mostly for me, the big one is economics. If people do a more analytical job of thinking about the total cost of ownership, they will realize that they're not saving what they think they are just at first blush. And secondly, I do think that there's going to be a wake-up call in the thinking of the vulnerability that one has when using predominantly sources from Asia. If you can't get your product, you're in big trouble, both economically and from a turnaround standpoint if you're a fastener distributor.
Why is that, though, Joe? It's not just because of the Japanese situation. There's another reason you're thinking of, isn't there?
Well, no. I mean, anything could happen. We've got an awful lot of unrest in the Middle East, and those aren't fastener-producing areas, but it's obviously the political unrest is growing, at least in that part of the world, and there's just uncertainty about using foreign sources of any kind that I don't think people put into their consideration when making purchasing choices as frequently as they should.
Okay, got it. Well, as I said at the top of the conversation, we can only really begin to scratch the surface of a subject like this, but I'll invite you both to offer any closing thoughts, and then we'll let people know where they can find more information. Harry, anything that you'd like to mention before we wrap up?
Thank you. The main priority for the companies, for the end customers, should be that they should reshore because it's in their own interest to do so, that they will actually be more profitable, have better deliveries to their customers, better quality, better brand image, better strategy, better innovation if they source locally, because they can work with their suppliers, make the engineering changes, etc. So it's 90% of the decision should be because it's in their interest, and 10% because it's in their country, their state's interest, in the interest of their children's and their grandchildren's lives to have a viable manufacturing industry here in the U.S.
Joe, how about you? You want to wrap it up?
Sure. It's an area that all distributors need to reevaluate, and in particular, from a technical support standpoint, there's a lot more technical support by purchasing domestically over and above the great points that have been made by Harry. We have a very viable domestic manufacturing industry, and we want to keep it that way, and so more and more product needs to continue to be purchased here, but not just strictly for patriotic reasons, but because when the whole evaluation is taken, there's definite economic advantages through buying domestic.
Right, and that's important to stress. It's only going to happen if the economic sense is there, so that's a great point. And I will remind listeners that they can see Joe Greenslade's columns in Fastener Technology International magazine, and you can communicate with him through the IFI website. And once again, that's at www.indfast.org. Harry Moser's Reshoring Initiative website can be found at www.reshorenow.org. And you can learn more about what he's up to and also download his total cost of ownership estimator tool, and that's at no charge. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for joining us. I think this was a really great segment, and it'd be excellent to have you back at some point and examine some of the specific points here in more detail. But thank you once again.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
It's just about time to crack one open on FTR. Stay with us.
This is Sue Rice with the FCH team. It's my job to make sure that as an FCH member, you receive the highest possible benefit from your participation in the network. Did you know that once you're logged into FCH, you have access to exclusive search tools, site statistics, and tracking information about your inventory and source finder inquiries? It's all just a click away, and I'm happy to walk you through it. If it's time to refresh your inventory, don't worry. We'll run your listings through our scrubber software and get you up and running in a very short time. If you can attach a spreadsheet to an email, you can list inventory on FCH. We can also show you how to optimize your listings to attract the most hits for your type of fastener. Send email to Sue at fastenersclearinghouse.com and let me help you get the most from the FCH sourcing network. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt for the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, www.semperfifund.org. Over the past 7 years, twice a year, the wonderful people who operate the Semper Fi Fund and many amazing Marines who have been the beneficiaries of the charities that have supported the Semper Fi Fund, including many thousands of individual donors, have come into my radio studio to tell their amazing stories of serving their country, of being wounded, and how the Semper Fi Fund has helped them make that transition back to recovery. Unfortunately, Bethesda and Walter Reed are full again. More and more men and women are coming back from the war injured, sometimes awfully so. We need the Semper Fi Fund to be there for these Marines and those soldiers, sailors, and airmen who served alongside of them. Please consider a gift to the Semper Fi Fund. Very low overhead, extraordinary capacity to get money where it needs to get in a hurry, and great management, including some of the senior Marines who have ever served under the flag. When you're looking for something to do that will make an impact, please check out the Semper Fi Fund. That's www.semperfifund.org, www.semperfifund.org.
This is John Butler with K&L Sales, your source for fastening technologies. And you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Brian and Eric coming at you with more homegrown internet fastener talk radio.
And with no fear that we're being watched by ducks either.
Or kookaburras.
Right. So no sinister ducks or kookaburras, yet another set of things to love about America.
God bless her always. So it'll be good to hear some feedback on that conversation with Joe and Harry.
Yeah, those two are pretty amazingly knowledgeable in their areas. It's a very important dialogue to have, and I hope that this does contribute to the wider conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking as I was lining up the segments for today's show there's this overriding theme of globalization and everything we discuss these days, it seems, you know? I mean, obviously with Joe and Harry, and they're talking about all of these ideas that have to do with bringing manufacturing back on shore. Janice is dealing with this worldwide social professional network, LinkedIn, among others. Even the news with Activant, Russ was mentioning how part of the reasoning behind this might be to globalize the ERP business.
Right. Yeah. As you know, I was for a different life involved in actually installing, globalized ERP systems all around the world. And despite the fact that everyone thought that they had to have a completely unique system, the fact was you could actually run a system in France that had been built in America or in Germany or in England, and vice versa too.
Yeah, and to take that idea a step further, as we said earlier, the NFDA is meeting right now down in Palm Beach, and globalization is undoubtedly right there at the center of their conversation. So all these things are really becoming a reality. It's going far beyond just lip service.
Yeah, well, the world may seem like it's getting smaller, but the reality is when you sit in a plane for 15 hours to try and get from one continent to another, it seems like a very big place.
Okay, I guess that's the alternative perspective. Well, it was a good show, and let's take a moment to thank our guests, and they were Russ Mellott from Activant Solutions, Janice Ceresa of the Anixter Aerospace Hardware Group, Joe Greenslade, Technical Director for the IFI, Harry Moser from the Reshoring Initiative, and of course, Mike McNulty from Fastener Technology International Magazine with his Fastener News Report. A way to stay focused on the fastener industry, Mike.
Right. We need him to be focused all the time.
And he is. And we'll invite you to email us anytime at the address ftr@fullythreaded.com. And check out our occasional Twitter posts under the handle Fully Threaded.
And check out our Facebook, where we actually put the links that we mention in the show on.
Yeah, you're doing a real good job with that, Bri. And also, if we haven't insulted you or your company on this or a previous episode of Fully Threaded, go ahead and click on the like button on Facebook. We like to be liked.
Yeah.
Happens all too infrequently.
Right.
So, Brian, you were talking earlier about Boeing, and you had some thoughts you wanted to share on that.
Yeah, it's true. A friend of mine in Australia who knows my preference for flying on Boeing planes as opposed to Airbuses gave me a book to read on the long flight back from Australia, and it's called Wide Body by Clive Irving, and it really discusses the history of the development of the 747. It goes right back into the early days of the secret development of jets by both the British and the Germans during the war, and how the British shipped a jet engine up to Boeing. The guy at de Havilland was friendly with the guy who ran Boeing. But it's an amazing story of American technology and initiative and the desire to really succeed in the face of really terrible odds. Pratt & Whitney had to develop an engine that was a completely new sort of engine. It had never been run before, and they ran into many, many problems, and Boeing had to develop a plane that actually was, by a wide margin, the biggest plane ever built, and make it commercial success. And everyone said it would never work and no one would fly in them and they'd never make any money. And, of course, years later they've made thousands of them. And it's the entire basis of international travel. It's a great book. I'm going to put the link on our Facebook page. Anyone who's even faintly interested in, the history of the American aircraft industry would find this book really great reading.
Yeah, it is an amazing American success story. Well, thanks for the book report, Bri, and perfectly in keeping with our theme.
It is, yeah, made in America.
And finally today, with all the amazing headlines out there, it was hard just to pick one to close out the episode, but in the end we had to go with this one, and FTR listeners will clearly understand why.
Because they're very perceptive people.
FoxNews.com, April 3rd. Headline, breakfast beer slammed by critics. Story begins, a new beer to be launched in New Zealand's largest city at 7 a.m. Thursday has been slammed by alcohol watchdogs concerned about its promotion as a, quote, breakfast beer. The wheat lager beer is described as, quote, a beer the ladies can enjoy too. If you're having a champagne breakfast but don't fancy champagne, have a beer instead. The New Zealand Herald reported Sunday.
Right, this sounds just right for New Zealand. It's interesting to note the brewery is called Moa, which is the name of a bird that went extinct in New Zealand. It was a very, very big bird.
Again with the birds.
Yeah, right. We're missing the bees.
Well, this one is interesting on so many levels.
Yeah, I know that.
So, but the ladies are real big on champagne breakfasts down there, or what?
Well, Australia's more been known for actually the, rather boozy lunch, but that's sort of gone away now.
Well, this would give a whole new reason to consider membership in the new Women in the Fastener Industry group, Wi-Fi. And actually, they have a meeting coming up at the Columbus show later this month,
Can you even join Wi-Fi if you're a man?
I'm not sure. We'll have to get Pam Berry on that one of these days and get a discussion on that going.
Well, one thing is for sure.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, as much as I love New Zealand, there's absolutely no need to import any beer to the Wi-Fi meetings or any other fastener meeting.
That's a great point. You don't need to be importing beer when you've got old Rusty Bolt right here.
Right. Exactly what I was thinking.
We're keeping it local here, folks. And that'll put episode 23 in the can.
Hey, keep well, everybody.
For Brian Musker, this is Eric Dudas. Thanks, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fastener's Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.
I can't think of anything else to say at the moment, okay?